thank you all. Welcome to the public meeting, one of two here in Jackson for the Pearl River flood risk management, and this is for the revised draft environmental impact statement. Joining me today, Colonel Gibson has already introduced himself. Sitting to his left is Brandon Davis. Brandon is our planning liaison for the Vicksburg District, and I may not have even said who I was. I'm Tom Shaw. I'm the project manager for the Vicksburg District. We would like to welcome you here. Also here with us, we have some members from the Rankin-Hines Pearl River Flood and Drainage Control District. I know Keith Turner is here, Dallas Quinn is here, Renee Turner is on that team. Understand that Mayor Burns from Richland may be here. There he is in the back. Thank you, sir. And if I've overlooked any of our other elected officials, whether federal, state, et cetera, if you would like to be recognized, we would ask that you please do that now. Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see you, Mayor John Horn of Jackson. Thank you for joining us, sir. So why are we here today? There's two reasons. One is we were in the Jackson area a year ago where we presented the original draft EIS. Since then, we heard a lot of comments. There were over 6,000 comments that were received to that document, and we took those comments and pulled that into our design. There were a lot of things that were considered. There were some things that were great ideas, some things that were okay, but you will see some changes in our document on review. So we want to update you. The second thing is we want, as the commander mentioned, we want you to have the opportunity to express your opinion. There's a microphone right down here. I would ask one thing is that we will go through the presentation, as the commander said, maybe 40 minutes. At the end of that presentation, we're going to have an open mic, if you will. I would just ask that you be respectful when you come up in order to give everybody the opportunity to comment. We would like to limit it to about 3 minutes, and unfortunately, I have to be the gatekeeper on that, so, but about 3 minutes to get your comments in. And then when everything is said and done, and you've all had the opportunity to speak, I would invite you, if you go back out these doors, back into the fellowship hall, we have multiple poster boards out there, and those boards have more detailed information than we can actually probably present in this period. So we want you to know about the revised plans. As we go through the presentation, you'll see there's multiple ways that you can provide comments. There are hard copy comment cards that look like this that were out in the lobby. You can also, there's a QR code that you'll see in just a few minutes, as well as regular mail. We have the mail address and email. So there's multiple ways for you to get your comments and your opinions in. We welcome those. We really, really want you to take a look. That QR code will also take you to the document itself. So we've got the main document, and then we've got the appendices. I'll give you a quick run through on those in just a few minutes. So that being said, let's go ahead and get this thing going if I can find the clicker. All right. Sir, do you have anything else you would like to give to the group?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I just really appreciate everybody showing up today, and I know there's a lot going on, so I appreciate everybody's busy schedules. If I were in your shoes, I'd come to this session and not the 6 o'clock, simply because today's the first game of the NFL season. So if you got to rush back for that, I appreciate just your participation today. But good afternoon. My name is Jeremiah Gibson. I'm the commander of the Vicksburg District. I'm honored to address you today regarding the revised draft environmental impact statement for the Pearl River Basin, Mississippi Federal Flood Risk Management Project. This marks a significant interagency milestone to address flood risks in Jackson, Mississippi, and I want to emphasize the critical role that your participation during this National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, review period. The NEPA process ensures federal projects are thoroughly evaluated for their environmental impacts. their technical feasibility, and their alignment with the public interest. This revised draft environmental impact statement, which was published on July 3rd of 2025 this year, and is open for public comment until August 18th in 2025, evaluates flood risk management alternatives to protect Jackson's metropolitan area from devastating impacts of flooding, as experienced in 1979, 1983, and 2020, as well as other years. Your feedback during this 45-day comment period is essential to shaping a project that is effective and responsive to the needs of all communities. Under Section 3104 of the Water Resource Development Act of 2007, the Secretary of the Army is authorized to construct a flood risk management plan that is technically feasible, environmentally acceptable, and provides a level of flood damage reduction equal to or greater than the National Economic Development Plan. That's cut and paste out of the authorization. It's a lot of words there, but so let me kind of explain it to you. The revised draft environmental impact statement assesses those criteria, ensuring the report meets rigorous engineering standards while minimizing the environmental impacts. That includes evaluating the Pearl River Basin. We look forward to we have engaged downstream communities, especially during in-person sessions at Monticello 2 days ago. We were in Slidell, Louisiana yesterday, and we have 2 sessions here in Jackson today. Our commitment to you is to deliver a project that is both practical and sustainable, preserving the natural resources of the Pearl River while protecting all communities from flooding. The community input is the cornerstone of this process, the NEPA process. The previous draft environmental impact statement that was released last year in June of 2024 received over 6,000 comments from stakeholders just like you, demonstrating a deep engagement from communities. This feedback, those 6,000 comments, prompted us to refine our project alternatives, and we're going to brief you those today. Really to ensure that the proposed alternatives balance technical flood risk reduction and environmental stewardship. By participating in public meetings, submitting your written comments, or engaging through email or snail mail, you help us identify your concerns, you help us identify and refine the alternatives, and really you help us to ensure that we have proper community participation so that all voices are heard. Said another way, your voices ensure that the solutions presented reflect the priorities of those who live, work, and thrive in this region. We need to hear your thoughts and we need to hear your recommendations. In closing, I urge each of you to participate in the NEPA process. After the public meetings, the revised environmental impact statement will remain available. I want you to share your thoughts, and I want you to go to kind of the other building there and meet with the technical engineers and experts around some briefing boards to ask specific questions that you might have. Thank you all. And I just want to kind of highlight, there's a map to my right here that's on the board, and I think it's important to explain from my perspective, my personal perspective, the Pearl River really has 3 personalities, 3 kind of general regions. The upper Pearl here in Jackson, there's a middle Pearl River section that transits the greater state of Mississippi, and then there's a lower Pearl Reach in which helps create that border between Louisiana and Mississippi, and then eventually get to the Gulf. Up here, we continue to hear feedback from stakeholders just like you that flooding is a primary concern, and we expect to hear many things like that tonight. Flooding from tributaries, but also alignment with the Ross Barnett. You know that the Ross Barnett was not built for flood control. It was primarily built for water supply. But we continue to work closely with that governing body to ensure safety where we can. We've also heard the middle Pearl River has bank stabilization challenges, especially near Monticello, and there's separate authorities and conversations that have started to evolve because of community events down there, and we seek to better help that community. Similarly, down in Slidell, there's a myriad of issues that Louisiana continues to deal with because it lives so close to the Gulf. It has so many, environmental concerns with endangered and threatened species. It has saltwater intrusion going down there. They have industry very tied, and you know all these things because you see it on the same news channels that we all watch. Bottom line is we all live together in the same community, and so these voices that come out from today's event will help shape this project. So I appreciate everyone's participation today.
Thank you, sir. And we've pretty much covered the purpose of the meeting. We do have the agenda items listed over here on the side, and we'll go through those. I would like to mention that we have 2 hours allotted for this meeting. Unfortunately, we do have a hard stop at 4 because we've got to pack up and relocate to the next one. I apologize, but it is the logistics of things. So the commander has already made it very clear we do desire your input, very much so. And along those lines, I want to just give you a couple of rules of engagement, if you don't mind. This meeting is being recorded via video, as well as we have a court reporter providing transcripts for us. I better get in front of the mic. And that being said, anything that you say is going to be recorded and will become part of the public record. So we would ask, so that we have a record of your attendance, please sign the sign-in list when you came in. The other reason that is important is if you make a public comment and we have a transcript of the comment, if we don't necessarily get your name, then that's a little bit problem in terms of who to attribute the comment to. So, all right. And when we get done, I'll talk about the rules of engagement just a little bit. The presentation, as the commander said, is maybe 40 minutes, and then I will invite you to come up and address the team, if you will. So next, our table of contents. So if you will, the document is basically broken up into 2 pieces. It's broken up into the main document, which is basically all of the written part based on each of the subject matters, and then on the right-hand side, you see the list of appendices. The appendices are where there's, if you will, a lot more detail, where some of the stuff may actually be summarized a little bit in the main document. The commander's already covered the meeting schedule. This is we had a virtual meeting earlier on the 14th. We've had 2 meetings in Slidell, Monticello and Slidell, and then this is the first of our 2 meetings in Jackson. Okay. As the commander mentioned, the reason you're here is because of flooding. Jackson has had repeated flooding, well over 146 years, and we faced, there's 500,000 people that were impacted in 1979, or the potential for impact in our population. The other thing is there was there's 5,000 commercial properties as well. So we've also mentioned the first draft and how many comments it generated, and we want you to know that we did listen. So what changed? If you look at the last line right there, I hope you can all see it. There were a couple of significant changes. We changed the alternates or modified the alternates based on feedback that we got from you. Originally, we had an alternate A, a C, a D, and an E. The alternate A became A1, alternate C was screened, D became D1, and E became E1. So you'll hear us talk about those alternates here shortly. The other thing is that there was some requested information for additional economics, and we have prepared an economics appendix as well, so that's part of the document. And then there were several additional flood risk management measures added three levees, and you'll see those. Of course, the Canton Club levee, McLeod levee, and then a Richland levee. And I failed to mention our appreciation for the 3CT organization for helping host us and set this up. My apologies for that. Let's go ahead and talk just a little bit about the understanding of the Pearl. There have been a lot of human impacts on the Pearl for many, many, many years. We all are aware that the Ross Barnett Reservoir was created. There was a straightening of the channel, addition of levees. One of the things that's a little bit interesting, and the reason we kind of put that photograph over there, that is actually a core snag boat in 1909 when there was still navigation on the Pearl. And that is just outside of Rockport. So there was a good portion of the Pearl that was navigable at the time. And that was the case until the early 90s, where we were unable to dredge any longer. We were basically taken to court and said we could not do that due to the threatened endangered species. So without dredging, shelling happens, and eventually navigation was no longer a thing. It was simply not economically feasible to do it. But the other thing that we noted is back in the 1879, the chief of engineers for the Corps, there was actually a report written, and that report described in some detail the bank caving that was going on, the snags, the impact to navigation, trees falling in the river, typical things that you might expect to happen when you have a river that's changing. And then we have our timeline. And so a couple of key points on the timeline is the creation of the original Flowwood levee. We've got that chief's report we're talking about in 1879. The Ross Barnett created in about 63, and the federal levees were actually created in 1968. Of course, we all remember and know the 1979 flood. And then with the addition of Interstate 55, there was some channel straightening that went on, and that was in 1971. So that's a little bit about the past. Let's talk about where we are today. So the feedback that was garnered from our Jackson meetings is what we wanted to highlight here. And so we did the same for Slidell. We did the same for Monticello. So Brandon, at this time, if you would take us through the comments, please.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Colonel. And good to see you all. A lot of familiar faces out there. Glad to see you again. Glad we're finally to this point of the process where we can meet again and share ideas. But as Tom mentioned, I'm Brandon Davis. I'm the planning lead out of the Vicksburg District again. Glad to be here with you today. And I want to set the table before we get into the alternatives and really the meat of why we are here. As Tom mentioned, received over 6,000 comments from the previous draft that was released last year. I just want to highlight a couple of the rows for you. I will mention that this is on a poster board that we have over in the fellowship hall. I encourage you all to go over there. We have numerous boards that will likely explain things better than I can from a technical standpoint. So if you have a technical question, I would encourage you to obviously make it for public record, but visit with our subject matter experts across the way and they can better answer your question. But the first one I want us to look at, if you look at the second one, is the inclusion of more levee sections. We heard you guys when mentioned that was needed, and we included levee sections at McLeod, Canton Club, also Caney Creek and Richland. And more importantly, for the transparency purposes, we wanted to list where that could be found in the report for your viewing. And you see that executive summary, section 3, the appendix I and appendix E is where you can find the locations of that information at. And then at the bottom, this project provide flood relief for homeowners found in section 3. What we learned is D1 and E1, including the overbank excavation, the 4 levees, provide flood risk reduction to over 700 homes, and that's found in section 3. Bottom corner, you can see the top 5 comments that came from this area from our public review period. The biggest concern was flood risk concerns, obviously, but also project features, the economics of it, some of the downstream impacts that the Colonel already mentioned to you, and then some real estate. Tom, next slide, please. We're going to go ahead and get into the meat of this and get into the discussion of the alternatives. As you know, multiple alternatives have been looked at during this process. And when I say this process, I mean going all the way back to 1986. First, they had the 4 points plan, including the Shockoe Dam back in 1986. That evolved to 2007. There was more of a levee plan that the Corps brought up, and then our non-federal interests developed a plan in 2020. We got involved with them at the direction of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, and in 2024, we released a draft EIS with recommendations for this area. So we're back now, with a draft environmental impact statement, and we want to talk about some of the alternatives that we have developed through that process. But to give you an idea of how an alternative is developed, we use measures, okay? And probably the easiest way of explaining what measures are is like if you think of baking a cake or something of that nature, the ingredients that you put into that cake, the cake's the final product, that would be your alternative. The various things, either it be a structural or a non-structural feature, makes up what an alternative is. So alternative A1 is the non-structural approach. Then we have alternative D1, which is a structural approach with a weir. That weir will be located just south of the I-20 bridge in Jackson. Alternative E1, very similar to alternative D1, excuse me. The only difference is there's no weir. So what we're about to do is really break down each alternative so you can get an understanding of what's included in that. I would like to highlight to you, and I know that we've had questions about this in the past, and I want to make sure that we iterate this. The tributaries are not part of the authority that we have for this project. Fortunately, though, there are other federal agencies that are working on those tributaries right now. I don't have the list in front of me, but if you would like it, once we dismiss today, come see me down here on the corner, and we can get you a list of who's doing what. But the alternatives that we are going to talk about today may not include deep up into maybe Purple Creek or things of that nature. I just want to highlight that for you while we're here right now. But again, as I said, those are being worked by other federal agencies. So let's take a look at this alternative. Alternative A1, as we said, is a non-structural approach carried forward in this EIS. It was modified, added the Canton Club levee. The non-structural approach to flood risk management is going to focus on reducing damage and risk without building any type of large structures. So no types of dams, levees, channels, things of that nature. Instead, it's going to use strategies to adapt more to the natural environment and help people and property stay out of harm's way. That could include, with the non-structural element, could be more of elevating homes, flood-proofing, and/or buyouts or relocations for individuals. Successful implementation of an alternative A1 would rely on voluntary participation of qualified homeowners, and it could include additional costs that were incurred by the homeowners. While A1 has garnered a lot of support from non-governmental organizations and certain federal agencies, it does fall short of being effective and practicable in this area, making it insufficient for addressing long-term flood risk in this area. We had removed it from consideration really because the lack of federal protection that it does for flooding in the Jackson area. So again, that one has been screened for consideration at the moment. Let's go ahead and look at D1, Tom. The alternative D1 is a structural comprehensive solution set to reduce flood risk in the Jackson area. The approach includes a series of large-scale constructible efforts designed to improve and manage the flow through the Pearl River. So what would happen in D1 here? Deepening of the channel overbanks, allowing more water to pass through high-flow areas, reducing the likelihood of flooding in the surrounding areas. And it's very important that we lay out here, this feature does not touch the river channel. It's only going to touch the overbank areas. And there is a great board over in the Fellowship Hall that really lays out what that would look like. So I want to point out that we would not be doing any work in the channel itself, just the overbank areas, trying to help create more areas for water surface elevation in the case of a flood. Talked about adding the additional levees, 4 key levee sections, Canton Club, McLeod, Richland, and Caney Creek, built to provide flood protection to 705 homes and also 40 industrial structures behind these new levee areas. Very important, the 705 homes. A feature of the weir and the fish passage in D1, a new weir would be built, which would include a fish passage and a low flow gate to maintain the connectivity to the aquatic ecosystem. It's very important. The weir would also provide attractive locations for recreational features as well. Some auxiliary features, such as improvements to existing federal levees, including pumps and seepage areas, are also needed to accommodate ponding areas behind the weir. We did talk about, non-federal levee improvements. Levees currently not under federal jurisdiction, such as the one near the Savannah Street wastewater treatment plant, would also be improved to improve system-wide protection. Bridge modifications. Some of our bridges would need some armoring of the structures to accommodate and modify, for the flow modify for the flow. Very important to note, though, we would not be tearing any bridges out or replacing bridges. It's more of armoring around the structures of those bridges, because we don't want to interrupt traffic flow. We already know traffic can be bad enough in this Jackson area. Also mitigation features. We have mitigation features to include environmental enhancements, habitat restorations, other compensatory efforts to offset any unavoidable impacts from the construction activities. Overall, Alternative D1 aims to reduce flood risk through major infrastructure upgrades, while also taking steps to minimize our environmental impacts to the area while maintaining ecological functions. I would like to point out that both on Alternative D1 and E1, we had removed the non-structural elements of those alternatives, but once the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works make a determination, some of those elements could be added back into D1 or E1 if a selection was made for those. Just wanted to point that out. Next slide, Tom. Looking at Alternative E1, and really there's not much more to talk about on E1 other than there is no weir for E1. It still would have the flood risk reduction measures would be the deepening of the channel overbanks. Again, not touching the channel, just going to be focusing on the overbank area. It has the 4 key areas for the levees, the non-levee improvements at the Savannah Street wastewater plant. That would likely still require some of the bridge modifications. And again, when I say bridge modifications, I'm talking about putting rock around the structures for flow. Again, we don't want to interrupt any traffic flow in the city of Jackson. It also would have mitigation features as well, but it would be less for mitigation with Alternative E1. All right, next slide, Tom. All right, so a very important slide, and I know a lot of you have made comments about the hydraulics, and this is very important for you all. I know that. One thing that Colonel Gibson had mentioned, and I want to reiterate for you, is the Corps of Engineers, we do not operate the Ross Barnett Reservoir. So any questions that we have about that, we'll partner with them on some of their operations, but that is not within our bailiwick to operate. So what I want you to look at with this graph here is a very good graph. It shows the water surface levels that are expected with or without the project for Alternative E1 and D1 during a 100-year flood event. What that is a storm event with a 1% chance of occurring in any given year, and that really is the common method and benchmark that we use for evaluating flood risk. The key points that I would like for you to interpret on this graph: upstream is to the right of the figure, up toward the very top. Thank you, Tom, for pointing that out for me. The blue line shows the water surface level without the project being implemented. And the orange line that you can see, hopefully you can see that. If you can't, again, we do have plenty of slides for you to look at. The orange line shows the water surface elevation with D1 or E1 in place. You can see where the weir is located for D1. We've got that pointed out for you just south of the I-20 bridge. And I think, yes, so we got that marked with an arrow for you. The extent from this, the big thing is our modeling shows that hydraulic impacts resolve about 5 miles north of Monticello, Mississippi, near the confluence of Copiah Creek during a 100-year event. That is something that we really emphasize to our neighbors down south of the Pearl, something they were concerned about. They felt that of the impacts that were going to impact them. But our current modeling shows that, like I said, 5 miles north of Monticello, that the issues are resolved. Also, there was no expected impacts to the state of Louisiana for construction of a project by alternatives E1 or D1. Another comment that we had, and a very good comment, was what happens during drought conditions? How do we handle that? Well, for low flow scenarios, a drought flow gate is included in the weir design. This gate helps maintain low water levels when minimum flows from Ross Barnett don't naturally overtop the weir. like what you would see during a drought, or if we have water supply withdrawals for the city of Jackson. It's also important to know that this feature doesn't increase downstream flows during a flood event. It only supplements minimum flows. We want to ensure that no added stress to downstream communities are occurring during dry conditions, what the concern that we've seen from both Monticello and the Slidell areas. Next slide, Tom. The economics. So the economics, we're just going to hit some of the high points on that. One of the big things I want to point out for you is that for alternative D1 and E1, you're looking at an average of 19.7 to 19.8 million in average annual damages reduced with these alternatives put into place. Both alternatives would reduce annual damages from the flooding of the Pearl Headwater by approximately 70%. You would see both alternatives removing approximately 90% of residential structures from the 100-year floodplain and approximately 60% from the 500-year floodplain. Now, one of the criticisms we have received on our economics is our costs that we've been used. I'd like to explain a little bit about that. We are currently at a level of design where there are a lot of risk incorporated with that. Based on our engineering regulation 1110-2-1302 from June of 2023, when we have anywhere between a 10 to 60% design, which is more preliminary, like where we are in this situation here, typically you're going to see a contingency cost range of 20 to 50%. What we have used with talking with our experts and our engineers, right now we currently are at a 44% cost contingency, and I know that seems high, but the reason that is high, again, is because of the risk of where we're at on design, and also accounts for inflation of when construction would start for this effort. Again, a lot of the cost is tied to the risk of when we would start. Next slide, Tom. All right, so now we're going to get into the environmental compliance features of this, and I know there's a lot of information on the environmental side, so I have some good information. So based upon the available data, it was determined that alternative D1, and these, what I'm about to say, are kind of tongue twisters, so I'll speak slow so I don't lose anyone. I did lose some people down in Monticello. May affect, but not likely adversely affect from an environmental standpoint, would be the northern long-ear bat and the tricolored bat. This is for D1, mind you. Would likely adversely affect, but not likely jeopardize. This is for D1 as well. This would be the Gulf sturgeon, the ringed sawback turtle, Pearl River map turtle, alligator snapping turtle, Louisiana pigtoe mussel, and the monarch butterfly. When we look at alternative E1 compared to D1, we see a lot less of impacts to our ecosystem because there's no weir in place. E1, and we have may affect but not likely adversely affect, and it would be all the species that I mentioned to you back up in D1. And the only species that would likely adversely affect but not likely jeopardize would be the turtle species mentioned for E1. Reason that you would see that is because there would be work done in the overbank areas for where, where most of the habitat for these turtles do take place. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service concurred with these determinations and provided a reasonable and prudent measures in terms of condition to implement that would minimize adverse effects. These can be found in the biological opinion of the document, which is Appendix D of the draft EIS. Implementation of these reasonable and prudent measures and terms and conditions are mandatory for the listed species that I talked about in both D1 and E1. Should either alternative move to the construction phase, there would be steps that must be taken to reduce impacts to species. Anything that is listed is threatened and endangered. Habitat mitigation plan is found in Appendix F of the draft EIS, was developed in coordination with our non-federal interests and also with resource agencies. It is a general mitigation plan based on existing data that is specific to the project and to the area. I want to emphasize that this is a very specific, a very general mitigation plan. The team agreed on data assumptions and applied professional experience and judgment where appropriate and actable for this mitigation plan. Lands identified by the non-federal interest are being assessed for any forested habitat measures that are required. These lands are within the Pearl River Basin and are available for acquisition. Any riverine mitigation measures will be assessed in detail in subsequent phase of the design, but prior to construction. Very important that this is completed prior to construction. There may be a need to combine several riverine mitigation measures to sufficiently mitigate for riverine impacts. Both alternatives would impact several ponds and oxbow lakes, which are considered lacustrine habitat. However, D1 would create a larger but similar type of habitat, so mitigation would not be required as it is self-mitigating. Again, that's for the lacustrine habitat. For alternative E1, that same habitat would be impacted, but mitigation would be required as the weir would not create a large body of water of similar habitat. Lacustrine mitigation is being proposed within the newly excavated areas with construction of oxbow-type lakes and ponds. And again, that is on some boards where you can see where we have potentially located those oxbow lakes and ponds. When the Assistant Secretary of the Army identifies a federal plan under the authority, a project-specific mitigation plan will be developed using appropriate species and models to refine project impacts and identify mitigation measures that would sufficiently mitigate all habitat types. For HTRW, any project that the Corps of Engineers is involved in, we have to conduct an American Society for Testing Material Phase 1 environmental site assessment. Has to be done. If we find there's any concerns found, we're going to elevate that up to a Phase 2 where we're going to be collecting soil or water samples to assess whether they contain any potential contaminants from the area. For this project, there's been over 6 environmental site assessments in the area. Prior to any form of construction, again, this is important as well, HTRW assessments will be done and completed, and appropriate measures will be completed to address HTRW prior to construction. The Corps of Engineers is not going to construct in any areas where there are HTRW concerns. Those have to be dealt with before we can move forward on construction features. Next slide, Tom. Getting close. So the cultural resources, and this graph that you see here is based on what was provided to us by the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. As you can tell, this is a fairly rich area of cultural resources. But what is cultural resources? They are physical and intangible elements that reflect the cultural, historical, and social values of a community or a society. With all studies, these were considered in the revised DIS, the Draft Environmental Impact Statement. Alternatives D1 and E1 have the potential to cause reasonably foreseeable adverse effects to historic properties, including National Registered, listed, or eligible buildings, district sites, and structures. So Section 106, it's a part of the National Historic Preservation Act. It's a federal law that requires agencies to consider the effects of projects on historical properties before they are carried out. So we have to go through the 106 process like we do for HTRW before we construct. It preserves cultural heritage and ensures the important historical buildings, sites, structures, cultural resources are identified and considered during project planning. Undertaking is very complex. Our team has done a fantastic job working with the state historic preservation offices in both Louisiana and Mississippi to develop a programmatic agreement. And also tribal nations as well and other stakeholders. What we want to do is avoid, minimize, or mitigate any adverse effects. The PA, the programmatic agreement, will be finalized and signed before a record of decision. So really the programmatic agreement is really what your plan is to take care of any cultural resource issues. And again, that is something that has to be taken care of before construction would begin. Next slide, Tom. For our tribal, the project team has actively coordinated with federally recognized tribes throughout the study process. To date, there are no tribal lands or specific tribal rights that have been identified within our study area. However, tribes have acknowledged the presence of protected tribal resources. What are tribal resources? They can be cultural keystone species, plants, animals, natural resources that are central to their culture and their identity. Also, significant sites and landscapes. Those could be burial grounds, historical trails, traditional villages, things of that nature that have some sort of spiritual importance to those tribal nations. These resources are being considered in the planning process to ensure respectful and reasonable treatment of areas with the cultural values. For our water quality, a 404B1 evaluation will be conducted after further data is provided. A Section 401 pre-filing meeting request was submitted to the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality on July 11th, 2023, and was also reissued on August of 2024 and April of 2025 due to the inclusion of additional features within the alternatives. And finally, our recreation. Currently, it is very difficult, as most of you know, to access the Pearl River and the study area because much of the land along the waterfront is privately owned. There are only 2 public boat ramps, one at LaFleur's State Park and the other at the Ross Barnett Reservoir. With a no-action alternative, public access to the river for recreation use will continue to depend upon existing flood control operation and maintenance, as well as managing future development around Jackson and central Mississippi. However, alternatives D1 and E1 do create the opportunity for public recreational opportunities. These opportunities include new boat ramps, kayak, canoe launches, camping areas, fishing piers, various trails for biking or hiking, and also places for those that enjoy watching wildlife and birds for that as well. Any construction activities with these alternatives will focus on river, channel, and bank areas by construction, and these potential recreational features will be studied in more detail as the project moves along. Again, that's all that I have for you. I know that was a lot. I really appreciate your time and your efforts, and want to hear your comments whenever we turn over to that. But for the more technically sound comments, we do have our subject matter experts across the way in a fellowship hall with boards, and they would love to meet with you and answer your questions. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Brandon. So we're to the next steps timeline. So we are right here. As mentioned, the public comments will be accepted for 45 days, which that ends on the 18th of August. Following the 18th of August, we will collect all those comments, and responses will be developed. They will be found in the final EIS when it is prepared, and we are on target. We will have our quality review, as you might guess, and then our council review with anticipation of meeting the schedule to deliver a final EIS to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works by the end of the calendar year. So I mentioned this earlier, but this is a good one to take your, get your camera out and take photos of. These are the multitude of ways in which you can access more information about the project, ways that you can make comments, and we absolutely value your comments. Please, please, don't leave today without either discussing via your voice, hard copy, or any of the other ways to access. So at this time, we're about to enter our public comment time. And so just a reminder, please come up, allow me to recognize you, state your name, and then we would like you to address. Before doing so, though, I would like to give the opportunity for any of our public officials, if they have any comments they would like to make. I would like to welcome Hinds County Board of Supervisors President Robert Graham. I think he came in kind of a little bit after we got going, but thank you, sir, for coming. And at this time, would there any public officials like to make any opening remarks? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name's John Horn, and I'm the freshly minted new mayor of the city of Jackson, just 31 days in. And thank you. And Colonel Gibson, I spent 32 and a half years in the state Senate, and I remember in 1995, I believe, I was first presented with the idea of a flood control plan, but you guys have been at it since '86, so my heart goes out to you, and we appreciate the diligence with which you are applying your efforts to come up with a solution for our flood control issues in the central Mississippi area. As leader of the community that represents the front door to the state of Mississippi, I'm here today to encourage the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. to quickly and swiftly approve alternative D1 flood control solution for our flood control problems in the Rankin-Hines Flood Control District. Alternative D1 provides flood control solutions and community benefits to help solve the ongoing flooding crisis and offer new public access to our river. This project is vital to protect our residents and businesses from catastrophic flooding. And I contend that the health and well-being of our capital city should be of concern to everyone, including those Mississippi residents living upstream and downstream of Jackson. As Jackson's new mayor, I'm committed to collaborating with our local leaders and our partners throughout Mississippi to come up with a bold vision for our future. I truly believe that Jackson is ready to rise again, and this flood control project can be a spark, the spark that ignites that rebirth in our city. Alternative D1 isn't just about preventing disaster. Excuse me. I'm trying to remain under the 3 minutes. I'm not sure I'm going to make it. The Corps estimates that it will reduce flood damage by 71%. It includes new levees around McLeod and Canton Club neighborhoods in Northeast Jackson, where we're now sitting. And it provides to the less prestigious area of Jackson around Caney Creek in South Jackson, providing much needed protection for more than 700 homes. And according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, it will provide that protection without much, if any, negative impact downstream to our downstream neighbors. To be clear, this project does more than protect. It reconnects us to the Pearl River and unlocks enormous new opportunities for our capital city. Cities like San Antonio, Texas, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Columbus, Ohio have revitalized their urban riverfronts and have seen an explosion of economic activity, investment, and growth in their downtown areas. Jackson is ready too. As mayor, I'm committed to working to provide Jackson with quality of life amenities like parks, trails, riverfront developments, amenities that help attract new residents and retain the thousands of college students we educate in our state every year. I encourage the Corps to complete their final review of the environmental impact statement and approve Alternative D1 as soon as possible so that we can protect Jackson and put our city on a path to a better future. Let's revitalize our neighborhoods. Let's rebuild a stronger, safer, and more vibrant city and a capital city that we all deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Hines County District 1 Supervisor Robert Graham, also a member of the Flood Control District. I'm here also in support of Alternative Plan D1. But in addition to that, I'm also here in support for the first time in a long time to say that I am 100% in support of our new mayor. We're looking forward to working with him. We're looking forward to working with the Flood Control District. We think that Alternative Plan D1 is the right plan. We have people that are in favor of it, and we understand that we have people that are against it. But we also know that there are different benefits, and the benefits deal with some of it's economical, some of it's recreational. It will provide more than flood mitigation. But we have to think about flood mitigation and flood control. That is the #1 priority. I represent North Jackson. I've seen the homes. I've seen the flooding. It does not take a lot of rain for people's homes to be underwater, for people to be in boats, for people not to be able to drive their cars. The Army Corps of Engineers, we look for them. We look for their leadership when these type of things happen. So it's of ultimate, it's very important. I guess I get a little bit too emotional when I start talking about flooding, but it's very, very, very important that we get this done and that it not take another 50 years. We can't stand another flood. We need people to move. We need people to act. We need for people to react, not just think about the benefits, but to think about the flood mitigation and think about the hardworking people that live in this area and also live on the other side of the county, in Rankin County, in Madison County. It affects more than just Hinds County. So I implore you to please, to think about those individuals and those citizens and approve Alternative Plan D1. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other officials? State, federal? Okay. Yes, sir. Come on up, please.
Hey, thank you for taking my question. Jason Barrett, represent District 39 in the Mississippi State Senate. I unfortunately do not have as great a voice as my former colleague, John Horn, but I do appreciate him and what he's doing for the state of Mississippi. I guess the question I have is, last year there were talks of some gauges being deployed downriver, and I think you guys were going to be looking at some empirical evidence of how floods have affected downstream. Do y'all have any of those, I guess, reports or any data from those gauges, which the legislature, I think, appropriated money for?
So, sir, we continue to use every gauge that's out there and available that's transmitting, that data. And we do recognize that just the legislature did appropriate funds recently. I think 2 or 3 of those gauges just recently came online within the last few months. So they are transmitting, and we are collecting that data, and it is feeding into our analysis. And I do recognize that I believe the plan was to put more gauges out. But I simply don't know that rollout plan, but we can follow up with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public officials? Okay. Seeing none, I would now like to, before I open it up, have everybody else, just a reminder, additional information is available over there in the fellowship hall with the poster boards and the experts that are responsible for those areas. So those questions can be answered. I would like to open it up at this time. Whoever would like to come up and speak, please do so. Just a reminder, I would ask you to give your name first and then ask your question, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Sykes. And I have a few questions. One is, after the purchases have been made for the right-of-way and whatever, who will actually own the land after the levees are completed along the development route? Who will own that? Will the feds own it? Will the state own it? Will the city or the individuals still own that property? Or can anyone answer that?
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for your question. We would work with our real estate team on that. There could be right-of-ways, easements, things of that nature. Most of the time in those type of areas, we'd work with a non-federal interest or sponsor to help sure they're maintaining those areas, cutting grass and taking care of things of that nature. That answer your question?
Okay, so, well, not really. I probably need to talk to whoever the real estate person is about that. And also, there has been concern about development opportunities once the flood control is in effect. And in previous meetings, there has been discussions about the development opportunities on both sides of the Pearl, the Hinds County side as well as the Rankin County side. And I just want to make sure that there is parity in the business development opportunity zone on both sides of the Pearl. And also another thing I want to know, who will be in charge of monitoring the flow and open or close the drought gates if that's the route that we choose to go in? Who would be in charge of doing that?
Sorry. Yep, the flood control district is responsible for the operations and maintenance of the project.
So which district, is there a new district being developed, or is it?
It's the Reagan-Hines Flood Control District.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Scott Crawford. I live in Jackson. I'd like to yield my time to Mr. Fernandez behind me.
Hey, thank you, Scott. My name is Juan Fernandez. My comment's a little longer, so I asked my friend Scott to help me out here by yielding his time. Juan Fernandez, I'm a Bellhaven resident. So the public feedback process democratizes and improves the planning of our infrastructure. Over the last 2 years, I've worked closely with Jackson residents who have experienced flooding, often at great financial and emotional cost, to identify problems and opportunities for the Pearl River Federal Flood Risk Management Project. I want to say Scott is one of those people. We've raised concerns about flash flooding, a recurring hazard for those near tributaries, bringing attention to the issue. We've also campaigned for levee protection around Northeast Jackson's most vulnerable neighborhoods. Now, the Canton Club and McLeod levees are the proposed actions with the greatest benefit to cost ratios. Mr. Turner, I was hoping you'd be on stage. I think you're somewhere in the pews. The last time we talked in person, you stressed that the levees may need improvements to address internal drainage. I agree and hope that today we'll hear comments from residents proposing solutions. That's the iterative nature of planning, formulation, feedback, reformulation, all in the service of creating efficient and effective infrastructure that serves people. This process can be challenging, but it's essential. Colonel Gibson, that's my takeaway from our last meeting when you asked me what my proposed solution would be. So today I'd like to address your question with 3 recommendations aimed at making the existing alternatives more cost-effective, environmentally acceptable, while maintaining their flood risk reduction benefits. I have some pictures here, so I'm gonna give you guys these. So I guess, Mr. Davis, we're going to be talking some of the recipe stuff here that you were mentioning. So my first recommendation is that you remove the weir. As reported by Mr. Anthony Warren with WLBT late May of this year, repairs and improvements to Jackson's water lines and the O.B. Curtis plant will enable the city to decommission the JH Fuel water plant. This closure would save residents $7+ million annually in operational cost and open recreational spaces near the Rivers Museum area. The Pearl River project could remove the plant's weir, helping the city move towards this objective and tapping into the NED benefit recognized as the cost of the most likely alternative. Neither alternative D1 nor E1 requires this weir, and its removal could improve these plans. The action could enable excavation of the eastern bank opposite LaFleur's Bluff, and thereby reduce or eliminate the need to excavate that state park. Consequently, the action could also reduce or eliminate the need for 98,000 tons of armoring, the protection system of stone-toe dikes, bank paving, and check dams currently required to protect the existing weir and Maze Lake. So that's my first recommendation, is that you remove the weir. Second, the project team should evaluate actions to reduce the cumulative backwater caused by the Kansas City Southern Railroad and Old Brandon Road. From figure E1-1 from the H&H appendix, it shows that these structures are within 1,000 feet of each other, suggesting that their hydraulic interactions may be the cause of 1.5 foot of backwater flooding in one
Excuse me,
year.
Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, sir. Sir?
We've got multiple people
Okay.
lined up for it. Can you
I'll
kinda
keep it
wrap
at 2,
up?
yeah, absolutely. I am also speaking on behalf of Scott. He did want to tell you that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Sorry, I lost my place. Okay. All right. So these bridges, the structures, they span 1,000 to 1,500 feet across a floodway that's no wider than 2,000 feet. For example, constructing relief openings near the eastern levee eastern levee could be used to create a subsequent high flow channel, a concept that is discussed in Appendix M, page 25, between Interstate 55 and Highway 80. Directly addressing the cumulative backwater effects caused by the KCS Railroad and Old Brandon Road would be compatible with alternatives D1 and E1. Moreover, while bridge or embankment modifications may be expensive, the action could reduce costs elsewhere. Relief openings would reduce flow velocities at the existing bridges, reducing the need for protective armoring and long-term bridge maintenance. They may also reduce or eliminate the need to excavate the western riverbank, thereby separating the significant expense of remediating the hazardous waste site at the Jefferson Street landfill from the urgent need of flood risk mitigation. So that's my second recommendation.
Sir,
Examine
can you wrap
the
it up,
cumulative
please?
effects. The third one is that to use these two items with a new incremental analysis of excavation, all towards the goal of producing plants that have a positive benefit to cost ratio. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Colonel Jeremiah Gibson, Mr. Tom Shaw, Mr. Brandon Davis, Mr. Keith Turner, local dignitaries, stakeholders, and the mighty residents of this great city. My name is Tamika Dill, and I am the president of 3CCT and also a resident of the McLeod community. We, 3CCT, three communities collaborating together, are a grassroots community advocacy group committed to the betterment of Northeast Jackson by focusing on the issues that impact our three communities. We are honored to present the comments of the residents from the three communities, Canton Club, Parkway, and McLeod. First, we want to thank you for presenting alternatives that include more impacted areas upstream and downstream. These proposals represent a step towards addressing our flood hazards and are an improvement to the Pearl River Federal Flood Risk Management Project. Our comment letter today is simple. Let's not limit ourselves to a step, but let's continue working together to improve the project and the future of our communities. The levees. We've been told that these federal projects cannot cover stormwater infrastructure. From our reading of the RDEIS, our ditches, culverts, and pipes will no longer serve solely as municipal stormwater infrastructure. They will be the levee system's primary drainage infrastructure because these proposed levees will not have pumps nor ponds. Essentially, levees act as a wall against external water levels. Their effectiveness relies on their structural integrity, the level of the water they are designed to hold back, and the amount of water they are designed to drain out. Our neighborhoods existing ditches, culverts, and pipes are dilapidated. Water sits on our streets and lawns, sometimes for days, after even the slightest rain. The proposed Canton Club and McLeod levee systems will require improved drainage systems to function effectively. An updated levee plan should therefore upgrade our neighborhoods' existing and decrepit ditches, culverts, and pipes to fully function levee drainage system and adequately explain why ponding and pumps are not necessary. Tributaries. Levee serves as part of reducing flood risk, but they should not be the only line of defense. We are asking for the omitted tributaries, Purple Creek, White Oak Creek, and the other creeks to be added back into the proposed plans. After clearing and maintaining these creeks, they will aid in creating a more comprehensive approach to mitigating the impacts of flash flooding and the bank deterioration, while ensuring levee drainage into this creek. The City of Jackson's commitment. According to the RDEIS, page 1-12, it states that the City of Jackson has committed to fund channel cleanout activities with ongoing coordination to determine the scope of those efforts. Some of those activities are drainage improvement for creeks, tributaries, ditches, removal of vegetation, debris obstruction, bridge clearing, and restoring visibility. And finally, the clearing of inlets obstructed by debris, sediments, and vegetation to restore functionality and improve storm runoff is planned for 5 locations. But none of these items have been implemented in our communities for decades, when they had the resources, the equipment, and the leaders, and a full staff, et cetera. But now, some of those resources are not available. And so us taxpayers, residents, and other groups, it's hard for us to believe that the capacity to handle these long lists of actions. Which local government made this commitment to you? Was it signed, sealed, and delivered in writing? Was it voted on by the City Council? As taxpayers, we need these questions answered because our many work requests are sitting on the city's back burner. The where. This plan includes an excavation cost for a 1,200-acre land that doesn't give the flood-prone upstream and downstream residents, taxpayers, and wildlife, nor
Ma'am.
ecosystems any flood mitigation benefits.
Ma'am, excuse me, can I get you to
And this
wrap it
is
up?
coming from a group of
Thank
9
you.
who are here, who can yield their time. If they may, I continue. So the people and the wildlife and ecosystems, we do not want the where. So I will reduce my report to,
Thank you.
in closing, effectively and properly maintained ditches, culverts, pipes, and tributaries will provide a level of flood protection that definitely be measured in dollars and cents through avoided damages and long-term cost savings among the quantifiable benefits. This year marks the 250-year celebratory occasion for the United States Army Corps of Engineers in building strong and delivering vital engineering solutions. Congratulations on your milestones. Let's end this momentous occasion by orchestrating the best flood mitigation alternatives by including those recommended questions and items that is mentioned in this letter and correcting an implemented economic development plan that didn't take heed to the core study warning them in 1968 about building homes and other structures in our 3 flood-prone communities and other areas. But they did it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Susan Gerard, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Mississippi Children's Museum and the Chairman of Volunteer Foundation, Great City, Mississippi. Jackson's been through one disaster after another: floods, a water crisis, a spike in crime, and crumbling infrastructure. We are starting to turn the page on many of these issues with new leadership, and approving this project would give us so much hope for the future of our capital city. It's important for the entire state of Mississippi that Jackson's successful. Every great state has a great city, and this is ours. For Jackson to succeed, we must recruit and retain talent, young families, and people that give back to their community. It requires quality of life amenities like trails, access to water, world-class museums, and other attractions. The compromise plan, Alternative D1, provides real public access to the Pearl River for everyone, as well as a much-needed stimulus to boost our economy, improve our quality of life, and help us retain our brightest and best in the region. This will create new access to the river that I know in Mississippi's largest educational and cultural attractions for children that is located on the banks of the Pearl River, that we can offer new educational opportunities and expose children from all over our state to their natural environment. Not only does Alternative D1 provide us with meaningful flood protection, it will have enormous positive impacts for our economy, quality of life, and Jackson's youth. As someone who oversees hundreds of campers, the floods in Texas were deeply personal to me, and when the national news reported that alternatives for flood control had been proposed by elected officials for decades, it really struck home that the time is now, and I hope the Corps will approve alternate D1 and bring flood control and better quality of life to our capital city of Mississippi. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Joel Ross, I'm from Rankin County. I'm a caretaker for about a 180-acre tract along the Pearl River below Lakeland Drive. Today, I understand that there's not any platted information based on property lines that show the work that'll be done, primarily the excavation and the landfill. When will that be available, do we know? And the reason for that, we just need to know where our property lines are. Once you get around that tract of land, there's smaller tracts that I can't tell where this field is going to be exactly and how it's going to affect the land and the timber that's located on the property that I care for.
No, sir, it's a great question, and you know, the answer really lies in what Brandon was talking about. We simply are not at the level of design maturity that we should be at to properly answer your question, but we have to wait for the decision to figure out which alternative we want to further refine and study. So we need a decision to get to your answer.
Okay, so once that decision is made, then your real estate area will then deal with those property owners on how to deal with that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ashley Mina, and I'm here to comment as someone who grew up by McLeod School and was in high school when the when the '79 flood happened. And that experience totally changed Jackson. We've been on hold ever since then, I feel like. And at the time, it was very reminiscent of what just happened in Texas, that Friday, you go to school, and then by that night, we didn't even know anything was going on. The water was covering Westbrook Road, and it was impassable to get out with a car. We had to walk through the neighborhoods to get out, and my mother and sisters and I all went to my grandparents in Belhaven, and my dad stayed with the house, and in the middle of the night, the National Guard came and told him that they thought that the whole dam was about to give way at the reservoir, and so he had to they were evacuating people who were staying on their upstairs floors. It's a very dangerous situation. It's been almost 50 years. It's time to do something and save our city from possible deadly floods. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Dion Monroe. I'm from South Jackson. I live on Lost Lake Circle. Every time the people's in North Jackson flood, we flood. And this project seems like it's all about North Jackson. I even flooded June 27th. We flooded June 27th. So I'm saying, is this project gonna help South Jackson or is it gonna affect them? How is it gonna help South Jackson in our neighborhood? Or are we gonna be like the peoples in Texas?
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Sir?
I do have a question. Looking at your map.
Sir, can I get you to state your name, please?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm William Ashley Vaughn, and I'm a native Jacksonian, even though I'm living in Ridgeland now. Lived in Jackson most of my life, and I'm old enough to remember the '79 and '83 floods. And looking at your map, I'm wondering exactly what kind of protection are you planning on giving Jackson north and south of the Jackson levee? Now, those are areas that did flood in '79 and '83. In some cases, right across I-55, and even without a 100-year flood, I've been down east of Gallatin Street, and it does flood fairly regularly. What kind of protection do either of your plans offer for those areas?
Sir, I think your question is best answered by our hydraulic engineer with some maps to actually point at in the kind of the other room there. Her name is Dana, but she will be able to specifically tell you, how that water will move around the area you're concerned with. Her name is Dana.
Yes, sir. That's over in the fellowship hall where the poster boards are. Yes, sir.
All right, my name's John Breland, and I kind of got this figured out in 2018. I did a post on Mississippi Litter Spotlight, which is a public group on Facebook. And I did measuring at the old Bannon Road Bridge. And what it boils down to is there is dirt under that bridge. And if you remove that dirt down to within 2 foot or at the low flow water level, that's 14,400 square foot of dirt that can be removed when the gates at the spillway only have 8,000 square feet of water coming out. Each bridge is a bottleneck. All it needs to be done is it opened up side to side, strengthened, and every bottleneck can be fixed and the flow will keep going. And it won't flood nearly as bad. The old Brandon Road Bridge.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Jill Mastro-Totero. I'm the Mississippi Policy Director for Audubon Delta. I live here in Ridgeland and appreciate the opportunity to speak today on behalf of our more than 25,000 members in Mississippi and Louisiana. I personally have been involved in the issue at hand for over 15 years, and having lived in New Orleans and was a homeowner during Hurricane Katrina, certainly can relate to the feelings of terror and despair involved with flooding. Audubon Delta has been active in this region for over a century, and we have been working for many years with our local chapters and regional partners to protect the Pearl River from what is called the One Lake Project. And I think it's important to recognize it was an idea originally proposed by a local real estate developer with the well-publicized goal of creating new developable waterfront property with purported flood benefits. And so during the 2024 draft comment period, we urged the Corps to reject ineffective flood solutions that would cause massive damage to the river, and we offered what we consider detailed science-based feedback and practical solutions to move forward with an expanded alternative A1 that could deliver effective, environmental sensitive flood relief for Jackson neighborhoods while protecting the river, downstream communities, and our economy. And so while we're glad to see 4 selective levee segments added to the revised study, we're very disappointed to see the Corps cast aside A1 that has Canton Club and misses the other 3 levees, an alternative that Audubon and thousands of partners and community voices called for, in lieu of a business-as-usual, damaging, costly, and less effective option. Once again, we call on the Corps to pursue alternative A1. This is the only option that could provide prompt, effective flood relief for the Jackson community without compromising public health, safety, and downstream impacts or devastating the Pearl River, and the Corps has the funds available to begin implementing the alternative now. The Corps is carrying out A1 type work in many communities across the country, so why not here? And once more, we urge the Corps to expand A1 because we know it doesn't go far enough. Expand it to benefit more homeowners, restore floodplains, address tributary flooding, elevate roads, and consider levees and flood walls for flood-prone neighborhoods such as McLeod, Parkway, Caney Creek, Richland, and maybe some others. The latest flood plan makes clear that alternatives D1 and E1 should be rejected. Both options will cause massive damage to the river and its floodplain, and they will also put more people and property in harm's way, threaten the way of life for those downstream, expose communities here and downstream to toxic contamination, and cause other neighborhoods to flood. So in closing, we urge the Corps to choose an expanded alternative A1, a common sense, environmentally sensitive path forward that can deliver prompt, targeted flood relief for Jackson neighborhoods while protecting the Pearl River and downstream communities. And we will be submitting additional comments in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Nichols, and I'm a resident in the 3 communities here. And just wanted to take this opportunity to express the fact that I think the challenges that we're facing today was based on yesterday's decisions. And even now, 50, 60 years later, we're still trying to address things that we already know. And so I really come as a concerned citizen saying, if not now, when? And what kind of guarantee do we have that the things that are holding up progress would not continue? And we're looking at still trying to figure out how to move forward and when to move forward some years down the road. So if you can give me some type of assurance, I've looked at the information and I see in the 60s they talked about the subdivisions were susceptible to flooding. In the 80s, I'm looking at information that tells me that, expert development could worsen the floods. In the 90s, developers' dirt can't cover the fears for the future. And so it's a repeated process, and I'm just thankful now that you're here and we had this opportunity to speak. But can you give me some kind of assurance that somewhere in the next some time period that you'll tell me that our communities and our areas will have a solution that we can move forward with and that we will move forward with? Or is this just a part of the process that could go on and on and on and on? And meanwhile, me and my neighbors are continuing to have to adjust to the challenges and the concerns that go with every rainfall. Thank you. Was there a reply or anything at this time?
No, Carl, I mean, I was waiting for the applause, right? So it's a completely valid concern. And so I'm committed to doing what that timeline says, to completing this process and submitting the documentation from all of this feedback that we're getting today on these proposals to the decision maker, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works this calendar year. However, I will say that after a decision is made, if a decision is made, but after a decision is made, congressional action may be required that will continue to require community involvement through congressional leaders to appropriate funds for the project. So, your input helps identify the solution, but that doesn't identify the resources that are required to fix the solution.
So if I still have any of my time, am I hearing you say that some of the suggestions that we make may price out the moving forward of the process, and which will cause the process to be moved back even further in time based on the cost of the plan?
It could. It could.
That's so disappointing. I'm sorry I asked the question.
Yeah.
Now, thank you for your honesty.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Verna Covington. I'm a resident of South Jackson for over 30 years.
Ma'am, could you step up,
And
please?
I've been inundated with flooding for a while. I noted that in your initial statement, you said that the federal government would not be responsible for the contributaries and the drainage areas for the city of Jackson or the county. So what kind of measures are you taking with the city and the county to ensure that the tributaries and the drainage areas that are currently blocked up now will be functioning in order for you all to do the work that you're doing?
So some of the tributary work that which you speak is being done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, specifically through NRCS and their works with tributaries. There's other works that's being done within the local drainage district and within the counties and under state authorities to clean out those tributaries as well. But it is a layered approach based on the many authorities that are out here to bring forth a comprehensive solution.
And so the start date for the project, if it's approved, starts when?
The start date for the project is really dependent upon the Congress appropriating funds, but it's really up to Congress on when we would start.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name
Sir?
is John Lusk. I'm from Jackson, not from New Orleans or Colorado or Monticello. I'm from Jackson. I'd like to talk about three things as quickly as possible. Bats and spotted turtles and mosquitoes that live in that river over there. These people need to understand that the Pearl River is already controlled, so downstream, the second issue, is not going to be an issue with this. Boo-hoo, they're going to do something and fix the river. It's already fixed. There's already a dam. So I really don't understand that argument. And of course, they had to bring up that a developer wanted to do the two-lake thing, which is similar but better than what y'all are hoping to do, I guess. Why do we act like nobody's allowed to make money on a project? The project will get done, and guess what? The troops don't come out and dig. They contract it out. Well, somebody's going to make money on that. Like, development is not a bad thing, and we in Jackson need to stop pretending that development is bad. Development is good. Every other big city has a river that they use for economic benefit, and we don't use it. We breed mosquitoes and apparently spotted bats. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Hi, Liz Brister. I'm president of Downtown Jackson Partners, and I'm a 36-year resident of Jackson and lived in the same house for 32 years in a neighborhood that has flood zone properties. Speaking to downtown first, I want to just remind our distinguished members from the Corps and everyone here that Jackson last year had the dubious distinction of being the fastest shrinking city in America of all cities 100,000 and above. And I want to speak specifically just to the community and the economic benefits of this project, that it could, in addition to alleviate flooding, it could also provide a waterfront experience for our community, which could have an incredibly important economic impact for our city. We've been losing population in a rather drastic fashion. And beyond my role to try to restore and bring vibrancy back to downtown Jackson, I have bought and purchased blighted properties in my neighborhood since 2018. I have restored 15 low to moderate income homes that were vacant and blighted, and tried to raise property values in my neighborhood and sold only to homeowners. And I can tell you that the property value related to flood is significant. The muscle memory of the 1979 flood and the fear of it when people find out the home is in a flood zone, even though there may be insurance, even though my neighborhood's never flooded, there is this fear that they cannot purchase the house. And it does have a devastating impact on this community of Jackson, Mississippi. I'm one neighborhood in Fondren, but there are neighborhoods like this all over the city and neighborhoods that have actually flooded, and it has a devastating economic impact. And we feel like that this is a solid plan that will bring great community benefit and will also alleviate flooding, and thank you for letting me make those remarks.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay. Last chance. All right. Thank you so much for your attendance. Please be careful going home, and we do invite you to go over to the fellowship hall for the next 30 minutes, and then we'll have to pack it up and roll. Thank you. We're out. Bye-bye.